Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel and hanging out with me a little bit. Always very grateful to have you guys around. We are going to be talking about overlooked areas, or what I call blind spots on a lake today. Now, these are areas that are really good fish structures, areas that are really good for fishing, but they don't look appealing to the untrained eye, that is. And I look for them. Every time that I go to a lake, I look for these inobvious, blind spot areas that a lot of people pass by. So today I'm going to sort of describe to you what they are, so the next time that you're on the lake, you're not going to miss them. You'll be able to hit them, and a lot of people just run by them. So we're going to get into that in today's video. Also, guys, a quick reminder about the Black Friday sale on my Solar Bat Series RB3 and RB2 Series sunglasses by Solar Bat that I got on here. If you get a pair by the end of the month, you can get a second pair of equal or lesser value free. So basically 2 for 1 on my Signature Series glasses. I'll put the Solar Bat link in the description of this video if you guys would like to get a pair or two. And also, please hit that subscribe button if you hadn't had a chance, guys. It's a good way to help the channel out too, and never miss a video that way. Okay, one of the things about bass fishing, unless you're spotlighting for bass, that is, because one of the things, there's always has to be like an asterisk for spotlighting. But if you're fishing for bass like a real bass fisherman does, there are lots of blind spots or places that people run by simply because they don't visually look good. Now, a lot of this has to do, let me give you guys a prime example how a blind spot occurs. Let's say that you're running down the lake, and most people, when they launch their boat and they take out and they're running down the lake, most people run down one certain part of the lake. It could be like the channel side or the closer side or whatever. But when you're running down a lake, you got the option of running like in the middle of the lake, to the right or to the left or whatever. And a lot of times, let's say for example, if you're making a bend in a lake, a lot of people tend to want to hold closer to that bend instead of getting out in the lake or on the other side of the lake, because it's closer to where they're going. And therefore, when you have a bend in a lake, a lot of times there is a blind spot or an overlook spot on the opposite side of the lake, simply because, excuse me, it's simply because it's out of the way from the track that you're making there. And these can occur in creeks, in creek arms, they can occur in main lake or whatever. So the first thing that I want to stress, guys, is like if you're running down the lake, try to picture how most people run down the lake. Let's say you put in your favorite boat ramp and you're going to run 5 miles up the lake to one of your good fishing spots. And you normally have a little track that you run up the lake there. And when you run up that track, there's parts of the lake that you stay away from in order to stay on that track. That's the first thing you need to look for. So one of my favorite techniques is I always try to fish the opposite side of the lake from where people are running up the lake. This is sort of an out of the way area. And a lot of times, those areas get a lot less fishing pressure. So let's say, for example, let me sort of clarify this a little bit more. You're running up the lake and you make a sharp left-hand turn, and there's a nice main lake point right on that turn that you make. Now, since people make that turn all the time, that main lake point gets a lot of fishing pressure because it's convenient. It's right there as you're making the turn. But on the opposite side of the lake over there, not so much. I mean, you may have 50% fewer boats actually explore that side of the lake. So in other words, what I'm saying is when you're running down the lake, try to look at the entire lake and try to think in your mind, okay, what is an out of the way place that I'm running up this lake? That's where you want to go to. Okay, the next thing you need to look for as far as blind spots or overlook lakes are banks that are void of cover. Banks that are void of cover are excellent areas. A lot of times bass will go to these areas even though they may not have the preferable structure, but they go to these areas to escape fishing pressure. Now, a lot of these overlook banks that you're going to see on a lake are flat banks with very little cover on it. They can be a mud bank, clay bank, they could be a gravelly type bank. They're pretty much, that's how they're set up there, and there's nothing visible or visual to those areas that attract a lot of people. But if you go over to those flat areas, a lot of times you can like get out off those flatter banks, and there's going to be some type of a, there's a drop off at some point. Sometimes that drop off can be significant. Sometimes it can be just a gradual drop. But if you go to those nothing looking flat banks and start working your way out, there's always going to be what I call the first drop. Now that first drop is where you have the most significant drop change in the otherwise gradual taper of a bank. These fish will set up on that first drop. I don't care if it's a 3-foot drop or a 30-foot drop. That first drop out away from the flat, nothing looking banks are excellent areas to fish. Now there's 2 different times that those nothing looking flat banks, the first drops work really good. Number one is in early summer. One of my favorite techniques is to get on those nothing looking flatter banks, and I throw a deep diving crankbait out off that first break. And I've caught tons of good ones around the country doing that. And also in the winter time, let's say for example, I'm on this nothing looking bank out there, and my boat's sitting in say 8 or 9 foot of water, and on a long cast I could probably hit the bank. Again, if I back off to that first drop to, let's say, where my boat's in 15 or 20 foot, and I throw up there in that 5 or 6 foot of water way out off that flat bank, I catch a lot of fish on a jerk bait and a swim bait, that time of year in the summer, in the winter time. Another type of a blind spot or overlooked area is isolated cover. Isolated cover is one of the most consistent bass catchers in the world, because the majority of people, they're too lazy to go fish a piece of isolated cover. And I don't mean that in a derogatory term, but when most people fish, they want to pull up onto an area and they want to put their trolling motor down and fish. They don't want to have to pull up, put your trolling motor down, make 2 or 3 casts and pull the trolling motor up. That's another type of an overlook spot that you need to consider. Consider how much work it is for somebody to fish a piece of cover. So let's say for example, you're running down the lake and you look over to your right and you've got this nice row of boat docks. Or maybe say there's 15 boat docks along this row of bank. And then on the other side of the lake, you've got this sort of nothing looking bank, and there's one little broken down, grungy looking boat dock on the whole bank. The first place I'm going to, guys, is that one grungy looking boat dock that's set aside from itself, because I know that most people don't want to take the time to go over and fish one boat dock. They want to get on a row of boat docks where they can just fish and not have to worry about moving. That is an overlooked area. That's one of the top overlooked areas you're going to find. Now, it doesn't have to just be a boat dock. It could be a lay down tree in the water. It could be a telephone pole in the water. It could be a little thing where there's 5 lily pads just by themselves over there and nothing else. But those isolated piece of cover, guys, are some of the most consistent fish catchers I've ever had. Most of the time, also, if you catch a fish off an isolated piece of cover, it tends to be a bigger fish. So that is 3 of the biggies right there. Is, like I said, pay attention to those out of the way blind spots when you're running down the lake. That's out of the way, that's out off the beaten track a little bit. Fish those nothing looking banks, go to those things every time, and then the isolated cover. And now another thing on those flat nothing looking banks, that is where you find a lot of isolated cover. And I'm not talking about you go to an isolated bank and just fish a drop off all the time. Some of the best isolated pieces of cover that you're going to have are in correlation with those nothing looking flat banks. Again, that's the same thing about, people just overlooking it. And a lot of times on those flat banks also, those nothing looking flat banks, those fish get out there and just roam on those things. They just move up and down them, again, to escape the fishing pressure. Because if you've got like a awesome looking bank that's got laydowns on it and trees on it, but also you've always got a boat on it. Think about how on your favorite lake, some of the really good areas, it's like you can't hardly fish it without there being a boat on it. And some of them, you never see a boat on it because they don't look that good. I'll give you guys a prime example. There was this one riprap point over at Lake Wheeler when I fished that Toyota Series Championship last week. And it's like, I tried for a week to get on that point. It's like, literally, guys, every Every single time I went past this point in practice and in the tournament, there was a boat sitting on it. Every single time. I never got a chance to fish it, and I wanted to fish it all week long. Out of, 4 days that I was on that lake, I ran past it 50 times and never got to fish it. And then on the other side of the lake, there was this little short section of riprap that nobody, is like on a nothing looking flat bank. Nobody was on it, and I wound up catching some good fish off of it. So anyway, that's just one of the things about it. Think in terms, when you're trying to look for these overlooked areas, these places people overlook, try to pretend you're another angler and you're lazy, and you say to yourself, okay, what would I not fish because it requires too much effort for me to fish that? Those are the type of areas you want to fish. A prime example with that is getting in behind a boat dock. Most people don't want to fight a boat dock cable and have to fight with casting up underneath a walkway and then working your way around another dock. Most people just want to pick a row of docks and stay on the outside, not have to get back in there and fight it. That's where you want to fish. You want to fish the hardest places where most people are too lazy to fish, and that's where you're going to catch your better ones. So anyway, I hope it helps out, guys. We'll talk later.